And now the answers to the previous episode's trivia questions. What did Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke do to raise money in Mos Eisley? They sold Luke's landspeeder. Princess Leia told Grand Moff Tarkin that the rebel base was on what planet? Dantooine. What was wrong with the droid that Luke and his uncle discarded in favor of R2-D2? It had a bad motivator. Hello, and welcome to A Fan Reads, the official Star Wars fan club newsletter. It's so long and awkward. I can't wait until they change the name. Hopefully it'll be something shorter and less awkward, but it's the official Star Wars fan club newsletter. And this is issue number 4. And in issue number 4, it is an interview, or it's information about Gary Kurtz. Let me fold this over. Okay, so let's read what it says about Gary Kurtz. Born in Los Angeles in July of 1940, Gary Kurtz grew up in the Los Angeles and San Francisco areas. His father made many 8mm films when he was young, and Gary discovered these when he was around 10 years old. The films fascinated him, and he spent a good deal of time viewing and editing these films. He became interested in still photography, and for this hobby, he built miniature versions of buildings and other scenes. He also used the miniature sets for the 8mm films he made. In school, he became interested in music, performing with his school band, as well as other local bands. Gary took his interest in photography and 8mm filmmaking and combined them with his interest in music to make short films of the band practicing and performing. Gary went on to study at the University of Southern California Cinema School. While a student at USC, he wrote, directed, photographed, and edited many industrial and educational films. Gary Kurtz was among a group of talented young filmmakers that has been encouraged and taught by working with producer-director Roger Corman. Gary worked on many of Corman's low-budget action and horror films, gaining experience in almost every capacity of filmmaking. Following 2 years of service in the Marines as a cameraman, editor, and still photographer, Gary returned to USC for additional courses. After editing several low-budget features, he became associate producer on Monte Hellman's 2-Lane Blacktop. Gary met Francis Ford Coppola while they were both working on Roger Corman's The Terror, starring Boris Karloff and Jack Nicholson. During a visit to Coppola's studio in San Francisco, Gary met George Lucas, who was shooting his first feature film, THX 1138. George Lucas had shot THX 1138 in a process called Technoscope, and Gary wanted to use that same process to shoot 2-Lane Blacktop. During his visit to Coppola's American Zoetrope studio, Gary spent a good deal of time talking to George Lucas about Technoscope and filmmaking. Later, George Lucas approached Gary with his idea for American Graffiti. Ultimately, Gary produced the film and George Lucas directing from a screenplay co-authored by Lucas, Gloria Katz, and Willard Hayek. The film was nominated for 5 Academy Awards, won the Golden Globe Award for Best Motion Picture Comedy, and walked away with both the New York Film Critics and the National Society of Film Critics Awards for Best Screenplay. It is also one of the most successful and influential films of all time. Wow. Having worked as a lab technician, electrician, writer, cameraman, director, editor, sound mixer, assistant editor, still photographer, production manager, and producer, wow, that's a lot, Gary Kurtz had the knowledge of sometimes I can't read. Gary Kurtz had the knowledge to coordinate a film of epic proportions such as Star Wars. Gary is currently hard at work as producer of the sequel to Star Wars, for which he will need every bit as much experience as was needed for Star Wars. For the first film, he hired the crew, planned out the logistics of the film, set up casting sessions for George Lucas, and made sure that all of the elements needed to make the film were there. He worked with the studio on various aspects of the production and worked on details of the script with George Lucas, figuring out what could be done and what could not within the budget and technical expertise available to them. There are two types of motion picture producers. One is the entrepreneur who makes deals over lunch. The second kind of producer is one who loves movies and who works his way up through the industry to learn every facet of filmmaking. The kind who uses his experience to help the director, writers, and actors achieve their artistic goals. One of the best examples of this second type of producer is Gary Kurtz. That's awesome.
How about some Star Wars trivia? According to his uncle, what had Luke's father done during the Clone Wars? Where was the Millennium Falcon berthed in Mos Eisley Spaceport? What kind of ship did Luke use when shooting Womp Rats in Beggar's Canyon? The answers to these trivia questions will be given on the next video. If you don't know the answers, that's okay. Just go see Star Wars again. Or ask a friend who's seen it a lot. Because how else would you get the answers?
Oh, there's more questions and answers. There's a question and answer page. Let's check it out. Let's see what kind of questions we have and what kind of answers we can get from these. Okay, oh, here's a good one. Where did George Lucas get the idea for the character of Chewbacca? A Wookiee is a cross between a large bear, a dog, and a monkey. He's very friendly until you get him riled, says George Lucas. I'm very fond of Wookiees. I have a Wookiee at home. Well, she's not quite as big as the Wookiee in Star Wars, but she's a Wookiee just the same. Actually, she's a dog. But she looks just like a Wookiee. She looks like a panda bear, but not as big. Her name is Indiana, and a Wookiee has certain dog characteristics. A Wookiee is protective, a friend, and kind of cuddly. How the term Wookiee was coined is an interesting story. It dates back with George Lucas, his first feature film, THX 1138, and a disc jockey who was doing some voiceovers. It seems that the disc jockey, while recording dialogue, had improvised a line about having just run over a Wookiee in the street. I asked him if he knew what he meant when he used the word Wookiee, and he told me that he just made it up on the spot. I liked it and used it in the film. When I was trying to name this new creature, I thought it sounded like a good description of the creature I wanted. Wow, that's pretty fascinating. Okay, another question. How were the X-Wings at the Rebel base on the 4th moon of Yavin made to fly? The X-Wing at the Rebel base had to be full-size versions because the pilots, ground crews, and robots had to be shown with them. Because the anti-gravitational engines did not produce thrust as we are accustomed to jet engines doing, it was reasonable to have the ground crew near the ships during takeoffs and landing. It was up to special production and mechanical effects director John Steers to make the ships fly. The X-Wing weighed over 5 tons, with the holding rig adding another 3/4 of a ton to the final weight. The structure of the soundstage's roof was not capable of carrying the full weight of an X-Wing and the rig from which the X-Wing was to be hung. It was obvious to Steers that a crane would be needed to lift such a heavy load, but where to place such a crane became a problem because the X-Wing and the set were being filmed and with several cameras simultaneously, each one from a different angle. There was no place to put the crane where it wouldn't be visible in the picture. Finally, it was decided to get a tower crane capable of lifting 7 tons from a distance of 100 feet. The crane was called a Zealous, and it stood 160 feet high. The crane was positioned outside the soundstage, making the task of operating it very difficult. The operator, sitting outside the soundstage, was unable to see what was going on inside the soundstage. The problem was solved by having another crane operator familiar with the inside of the crane relaying instructions to the operator by radio. Credit must be given to these crane operators. Throughout the entire shooting, not a single retake was required due to an error on their part. The moves they had to make were complicated and had to be precise to within a fraction of an inch. With the expertise of these crane operators, John Steers was able to lift and lower the X-Wing spacecraft, making them look as if they were flying. What else do we have going? More information about the Star Wars sequel. On August 4th, 1978, it was officially announced that the title of the sequel to Star Wars will be The Empire Strikes Back. The second film will be a continuation of the first film, with more emphasis placed on the characters and their development. Along with the increased emphasis on the characters, The Empire Strikes Back will include a resolving of the romantic rivalry between Luke Skywalker and Han Solo for Princess Leia. Preparations have already begun in the art department and special effects department. Special effects photography will begin in October of 1978, with principal photography beginning in February of 1979. The film is tentatively scheduled for release in the spring of 1980. Returning for the sequel will be Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, Han Solo, R2-D2, C-3PO, Chewbacca, and Darth Vader. Additionally, there will be some new human and alien characters introduced. How exciting! New stuff. George Lucas will be acting as executive producer on The Empire Strikes Back, with Gary Kurtz returning as producer. Irvin Kershner will be director. I hope he's good. Don't want it to totally suck. Stuart Freeborn will be returning as makeup supervisor, and John Williams will be returning to the music. Awesome. Norman Reynolds, art director on Star Wars, will be production designer for the sequel. Taking over as special effects supervisor will be Brian Johnson. His previous credits include 2001: A Space Odyssey, working with Doug Trumbull, The Day the Earth Caught Fire, The Return of the Pink Panther, Alien, currently in production, and the television series Space 1999. Ooh, I like Space 1999. That was a good show. Oh my gosh. I cannot wait for it to come out. It's going to be so awesome. All the characters are coming back. Oh, Star Wars is Star Wars is like the best thing ever. Oh, and also the Name the Newsletter contest winner. Oh, this is exciting. In issue 2 of the newsletter, we announced the first in a series of contests to be held by the official Star Wars fan club. The purpose of the contest was to come up with a title for the official newsletter of the club, which, up until this point, was simply called The Newsletter. Any member of the club was eligible to enter, and literally thousands did. It was not easy deciding which title to choose and who the winner would be. The thousands of entries received were narrowed down to 9 finalists, with the judges voting to determine the winners. The judging and voting were done by representatives of Star Wars Corporation, including George Lucas and Gary Kurtz. In the case of duplicate suggestions, the one with the earliest postmark determined the winner. The new title for the newsletter of the official Star Wars fan club is Bad Track. It's catchy. It's good. I like it. The title was suggested by Preston Postle of Avon, Ohio, who is our first place winner. He will receive an R2-D2 cookie jar from Roman Ceramics and a set of 3 Star Wars drinking mugs. Darth Vader, Chewbacca, Obi-Wan Kenobi from the Mind Circus. He's so lucky. I'd love to have those. Second place goes to Robbie Richardson of British Columbia, Canada, for his suggestion of the Comlink. He'll be receiving a set of the 3 Star Wars drinking mugs. The Comlink wasn't that bad. That's a good one. Third place and an R2-D2 cookie jar goes to Robert Trox of Memphis, Tennessee, for a suggestion of Inside Star Wars. That's kind of boring. Well, that's the news from the official Star Wars fan club newsletter, now called Bantha Tracks. All right, until the next issue, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.